Hello, internet friends. The week of Fel completes. My name is Bay. Welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha First Pass First Impressions coverage. This is going to be the Destruction Warlock. And as my somewhat obviously kind of clickbait face and thumbnail will show, I'm sorry. I'm just... Affliction, if you watched the previous video, got a whole lot of little tweaks and things. Demonology, yeah. Destruction, everything that you had that was fun is just gone. That's basically it. I'm gonna stare down the camera awkwardly just a couple more seconds here. That's it. Obviously, we live in a expansion to expansion cycle where a lot of borrowed power changes how you play. Changes how you interact with the world, even changes and shores up issues and problems that the base spec has. That is just unfortunately what we're looking at right now in the alpha. Hopefully that changes. So let me go through all the core baseline stuff that Destruction has, and then that's basically that's about it. But before we get into that, of course, there's a link down below in the description box for my channel guide where everything is put together, the dungeon runs, all the testing VODs, all the videos for all the other specs we're doing, even going back to expansions. If you want to go back and look at the previous Warlock ones from Legion or from BFA, feel free. You know, I might be even more cringe back then. Who knows? But also down there, you're going to find, don't forget about this one, Twitch Prime subs. Here he goes again, Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime. Just saying, gentle nudge. Don't forget that every month, if you do not use your Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime token, then all your sub money just goes to Amazon Prime instead of going to Nobbel, or to Preach, or to Mr. GM, or to Tellius and Evitel, or to me. And actually, don't give your Twitch Prime subs to Nobbel because he said on my stream today to give them to me. But if you give them to him, you get shirtless photos of him. So choose your own adventure. There you have it. Twitch Prime. Don't forget, links down below if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about. All right, Warlock stuff. You have Curse of Doom still? It's the crappy version. Demonology gets a slightly better version of it. The 5% chance to summon an uncontrollable Doom Guard for 25 seconds, where you have to actually enslave it, that means you lose your own pet by doing so. Doesn't even work, apparently. Hasn't worked since Legion when it changed. So, I don't know. You have curses back now. Wrap your head around this one real quick. This was a YouTube comment that I read earlier that I totally am going to steal. You are a ranged caster, but you allow other people to gain physical damage. Curse of Wreck is back, of course. Physical damage of the target that is cursed takes 10%, or say does 10% more damage physical wise, and it takes 5% more physical, so you're buffing the melee. This does stack with the monk buff, so that's 10% more damage to your physical damage, your melee, your hunters, your tanks, and only 5% from one demon hunter to you. And this, of course, can be sort of counteracted with weakness, which is a 20% attack speed slow. This, however, means that Warlocks are essentially going to be required in raids to at least have 2, if not 3 of them. Curse of Tongues is a casting speed slow, which I'm going to repeat myself again just to make sure not every Warlock watches every single Warlock video. This does not work on bosses in dungeons right now, so it could be safe to assume it doesn't work on any dungeon bosses or any raid bosses, because if it worked on raid bosses, it would mess with spell queuing. And if it worked on dungeon bosses, it would basically mean that you wouldn't get a DPS curse, or you're not going to be debuffing them to do less damage to your tank, for example, or taking more physical damage. It is 1 curse per Warlock here. We bop over, head across over these target dummies. It is 1 curse per target per Warlock. You can, of course, have different curses on different mobs, right? You can do 1 of each on different targets, for example, but you cannot, once you change the curse, it changes the entire curse on the target. So we're back to the old school style where each Warlock essentially gets designated to do 1 curse, and that's the 1 curse they put on the target, and that's the one you keep up the entire fight. If, of course, it requires you to have 3 Warlocks, I'm imagining it might only be 2 if the whitelist, blacklist for Curse of Tongues does not include dungeon and raid bosses. Could you imagine Mythic Jaina with spell queuing being affected by 30% on or off as a toggle to manipulate when she didn't or did cast certain spells, or how long those channels certainly lasted? That sounds like an absolute nightmare. And please no. Please no. Other baseline things. Let me pull my notes back up here. That's basically it for curses. I don't know. It seems strange. I have no idea. What also seems strange is you have corruption. And yes, that is the cast time version. It is not instant cast for you and does nothing for the Destruction Warlock. It only has a interaction with Affliction being instant cast, but for Demonology and for Destruction, it does damage over 14 seconds. It doesn't give you Ember Shards, Shard Fragments, whatever. I put forward the feedback that I really think it should just be baseline for all Warlocks as it is now, but baseline instant cast, and to be a tool that you, as any Warlock, Destruction or Demonology more in this case, can cast something while on the move. Like, oh crap, I gotta move. Let's refresh my Corruption. Because you have Immolate already as your core shard generating damage over time spell that roughly generates six shards per cast. So obviously it scales with more targets. Immolate gives you more shards. But Corruption, because it does nothing and it's so weak, look at the damage of an Incinerate's over here actually. Incinerate is 300 damage on a GCD cast time. And Corruption, the spellbook's all messed up for Warlocks, it's not in actual order, is 421 over 14. And it takes 2 seconds to cast before haste. I don't understand. And yes, there was a post that came out from Blizzard saying that not every single thing is meant to be put on your bars and cast again. But it does just seem kind of funky that you don't get the ability that has any synergy whatsoever. But I guess, I mean, I play an Enhancement Shaman mostly, and I'm seeing the same kind of crap with Enhancement. Like here, Searing Totem, it only has one talent that affects it. If you don't have that one talent, then nothing else affects it. We're in alpha, it's early, this is weird. It should just be instant for baseline for all Warlocks. It's a movement tool. I think that would be a nice middle ground if you have it back again. Because obviously if you move as Destruction, what can you do? You can cast Conflag. You can recast your Curse. That's it. Right? It's pretty much it. And if you had instant Corruption, at least you have something else. So Corruption's back. Yippee-I-O. Also, I have Grimoire of Sacrifice talented right now. I was playing with a... basically this build, I had channeled Demon Fire in for the dungeons. If you want to watch the dungeon run, I was trying to do different like opener style things where you could like weave in and out of abilities and havoc some things and then spread some hard cast immolates and go into Fire and Brimstone, because this also got buffed. It's now 2 Soul Shard fragments for each additional target now, up from 1 to the 50% buff. Just trying to see if Fire and Brimstone actually felt like it was, you know, chonky. But then I was like, let's try Grimoire of Sacrifice, because this one was actually buffed. So awkwardly enough, let me go down here. So yeah, so Gosak is now 43.75%, up from 35% spell power. It's still the roughly 20, I was told it's 20 times haste RPPM. So still fine. And, you know, you can obviously want to sacrifice a Fell Hunter, right? So you get a interrupt. So you obviously want to sacrifice your Fell Hunter, so you get an interrupt. And yeah, you saw that right. If you haven't watched the other Warlock videos, I'm so sorry. All your summons are 6 seconds now. It's a PvP buff that affects PvE. Hopefully they change this and revert this back so that in PvE, you're not flagged to take longer. But in PvP, if they want you, this is for hunters too, to have longer cast time on your pets, because killing a hunter pet or a warlock pet really doesn't matter. You just like, bloop, it's back. Is something that definitely should change, because there's no pet weaving now. There's no way. On Demonology, my Felguard died. I had to stand still in combat for 6 seconds and resummon it during a boss fight. What face? It's so... I don't understand. I don't even play a Warlock. And I'm just like... I don't know. I don't get it. So that's a thing. But Grimoire of Sacrifice is buffed. And while we're going over things that are buffed here, there's a couple more that I'll go over. The main thing with Demonology right now is that everything that was fun in BFA is gone. So there's no compensation for things like Flashpoint. There's nothing for Chaotic Inferno. There's no Crashing Chaos. There's no Chaos Shards, right? There's no Roiling Havoc, which roiling, both. That is a huge component in getting off your big Chaos Bolts and having that huge int stack. That is all gone. There is obviously then, as my thumbnail showed, no Visions of Perfection. Or no Memory of Lucid Dreams. All that stuff is gone. And there's nothing in the kit. Is corruption gonna do that for you? Or a curse? Nothing. So you're back to, at least right now, the core of destruction is back to the very slow, methodical play. Or I mean, we'll havoc and we'll double time this real quick. Where you have your moments of slappy slap, right? And you get in there with your, you know, the big green, you know, your big green stupid Chaos Bolt cannon, right? But you're back to essentially just keeping up your immolate and weaving your, oh, there's a reverse entry proc right there at the same time, but weaving your backdraft on top for the hasted spells and just firing out your big green booger beams. I don't know what you call them. Everyone calls Chaos Bolt something different. Also, side note, can Channel Demon Fire be castable while moving? Holy crap. This always felt really fun to use on big AoE packs when I actually got a whole bunch of immolates out because of all the ricochet damage, but why the hell can you not move while casting this? I know you're a caster, and some things should be castable while moving. Just like a couple of things. Go watch the dungeon footage. It's linked down below. The new dungeon we're doing, spoilers I guess if you're this far in the video, the new dungeon is up. We're doing it 3 times, and it's going to be the dungeon footage video coming up next of this run, but I just talk over the whole time. The 2 of the bosses, the first one and the third one, have a lot of you can't stand still and cast, otherwise you get chunked for half health. They have a lot of AoEs going out, a lot of ground-based effects that are hitting you, or you get adds on, you have to run to the tank, right? Run to the boss so they get picked up and AoE'd and cleave down off you so they don't just blow you up. There's a lot of times when you can't stand still. So both on Demonology and on Destruction more so, because on Affliction I was like, put my dots up and run around, whee, right? But on these specs that really require a lot of turreting, it felt really rough to not be able to turret. And sure, you can obviously haste it up, and Flashover is still probably your best choice in this tier. Soulfire didn't receive anything. Eradication is still kind of weird. It works really well with internal combustion, but internal combustion actually doesn't even work right now. Reverse entropy, still RPPM to get extra haste, also fine. Shadowburn is still too kind of finicky and didn't get buffed either for its cost reward weird sniping mobs dying for soul fragment stuff. So it's still gonna be a lot similar. Your 35 tree, your 45 and your 50 could see some movement, but you're gonna run Flashover and reverse entropy all the time, most likely right now, unless something really tips the balance. Because all that stuff is gone. And obviously you can drop your Infernals and get all your shards building up so you can fire off even more of your big green cannons. Right? Because it's still going to give you shard generation. That hasn't changed yet. But obviously you're not getting any additional procs. You're not rolling in your Infernal windows anymore. You don't have any ways to get your Chaos Bolts back faster and more shard generation. It's going to be that slow play that you used to have before. I really think before like all the Legion stuff turned on, and then of course all of it just, you take off your Azerite and your Heart of Azeroth in BFA right now, and this is what you got. But on that note, again, there were some more things that were buffed. One of them is not Incinerate. It's still currently the exact same damage value from spell power currently as you have in BFA, but Inferno now has 20% increased damage on Rain of Fire and still the chance to generate soul shard fragments from every tick of it. So, okay. As I already said, Fire and Brimstone now is at the 2 soul shard fragments for each additional enemy hit. This did, so I'm running Flashover and Reverse Entropy in the dungeon, and I was getting the hasted casts with Backdraft. And there is some pulls in the new Nightfade dungeon where there's like 4, 5, or 6 mobs, and I would throw off like 2 incinerates and you feel the shard generation. It definitely does chunk you up. Now, do you spend that on a Havoc Chaos Bolts on like the 2 main targets in that run, or do you just cast Rain of Fire? If you're Fire and Brimstoning, this just gives you to be able to cast Rain of Fire faster, whereas obviously Inferno is just stronger Rain of Fires. And on that note, though, which kind of devoids the whole thing, is Cataclysm also got buffed. I don't know why. It's such a good spell. It is really good. I'm not going to default, and dog on Cataclysm, but the combination of Cataclysm and Channel Doomfire is way too good. I'm thinking I can't get 2 of these. They're too far away. Blammo. Yeah, it's going to hit 1. But I mean, it's 200% of your spell power now on the initial hit. And then 180% is what it is currently in BFA. Now, sure, it's because of the stat squish. Our intellect is obviously very, very small. These are little 50 characters. They'll be still relatively much lower in comparison at level 60 than you're seeing it right now at 120. But numbers are a thing that gets tweaked and moved around. But it's weird that they buff Fire and Brimstone and Inferno, but then also buff Cataclysm, which has been set and forget for a very long time. Back in the day, you used to have Fire and Brimstone baseline. It was the toggle on and off that cost shards. So you'd base it before the whole shard generation version switchover came around. So that was that your filler would AoE. Now, of course, you have to talent into that your builder AoEs more and gives you more shards. Because by default, it's not going to do any of that. But I think there's an interesting feel. Gado was in chat today, and a bunch of other warlocks too. Shout out to Cheese as well, helping me out in chat figuring things out. But Gado was basically saying that as my game crashes, I'll log back in. It's been happening all day today. Crash, crash, crash. Is that you basically change your build based on your 35 row. Just because your top 2 talents in your 15 and 30 are just so set that you never change them, right? You're just taking, or I guess 15 and 25, sorry. You're taking flashover and reverse entropy all the time now. So you change your build based on Inferno, if it works for like mass AoE. Fire and Brimstone for cleave and rotational building to AoE in some sense. And then Cataclysm is your burst, right? Cataclysm, Channel Doomfire on like 30 mobs. That leads me, of course, to AoE caps. There are none. Nothing we could find. Nothing is getting AoE capped or square root divided by the number of targets. Nothing for that. Nothing for Affliction, nothing for Destruction. The only thing is for Demonology has their Fellstorm on their pet. So that is really an interesting nudge. I talked about this in the last video, where I basically said that I think Blizzard is trying to make it so that casters might be a bit better at your AoE rotation stuff, so that they are the ones that can bring a lot of that spread AoE cleave sort of rot, and a lot of melee are getting hit with a lot of target capping, even though there's a target cap on like Fel Barrage, say, for Havoc Demon Hunter, but it still hits 8 targets every wave or pulse or whatever, and you can still scale it up with haste, what fires off even more bolts. I-Beam got hit really hard, though. I-Beam has the square root formula now, so the more targets you I-Beam, the less damage you do to each individual target. But if you slam out a Cataclysm into a Channel Doomfire, the damage it does is the damage it does. You can spread to, 8+ targets with immolates. You've got shards flowing in. You'll have extra shards, so you can either throw Chaos Bolts or just drop Rain of Fires, the baseline Rain of Fire, as well as you channel your Doomfire out there, and you get some really chunky AoE. Same thing for the previous video. If you want to hear me talking about the AoE for Affliction, go check that one out. And I think that's their gentle nudge. Other little things, of course, here. Tongue-Tied is a PvP talent in the PvE tree. It also won't work on bosses if you can't put Curse of Tongues on bosses, so... But it doesn't even work right now. It does 0% or 0 actual absorbed healing if a Curse of Tongues cast player or mob casts something, it absorbs healing on them. That's all it does, but it's against Mortal Coil and Dark Fury. Dark Fury also got buffed. Sold a 15-second cooldown reduction, but now it has a little bit more range on Dark Fury. It's 2 more yards on the radius. I would still put forward that it takes off maybe like 0.2 seconds of the cast time, potentially. 0.5 would be too much, but 0.2, right? Because if reverse entropy procs, and you've got a little bit more cast time off of it. So I was throwing down some big Dark Furies today in the dungeon. It felt fine, right? You could Dark Fury, Cataclysm, Channel Doomfire, throw out a Rain of Fire between the Channel Doomfire, and blow things up. And then focus on single targeting stuff down with your Chaos Bolts once you get more shards back, because you're going to have tons of immolates spammed. So Dark Pact got a little bit of a buff coming too. You see that additional 0 in the tooltip. That's going to be a spell power modifier, so that it'll gain more of an amp to your survivability. Still is weird that Burning Rush is in a tier where you're not supposed to take damage with Demon Skin and Dark Pact. Just, we've talked about how Burning Rush could be a baseline ability. Not everything needs to be baselined, but when you take a talent that stays set for 6, 8, 12 years or whatever, just, I mean, this version of Burning Rush, though, if they talented it, the suggestion that I would put forward is that it does the exact same thing. It hurts you 50% movement speed, but it would have to have a cooldown and a shorter duration where you don't keep it on forever. So imagine if it had like a 1 minute cooldown and only lasted for 6 seconds or 8 seconds or so. Right? Maybe the damage would be a little bit higher for that payoff, but it'd be baseline. A lot of the Warlocks in chat were like, yeah, let's go. They were just like, please, there's something, right? Because all you do is you talent it and you're done. Hey, you talent it and you just have it. Maybe part of the Warlock fantasy is to stay on fire forever. I get it, I suppose. But obviously right now it becomes a thing that you can actually just leave on all the time and just get healed through the damage and have the extra mobility all the time. But if you want it as a baseline ability, they probably have to do something to it to limit its overall huge effectiveness, especially because you've got Demonic Circle and, you know, Teleport baseline too. So now you don't have to worry about talenting into your blip. That's, of course, core to the class. So it's a little extra mobility, but it has to be like super planned ahead mobility, right? It's not like something you can react to, really. But you'll know when you need to use your Demonic Circle. You're a Warlock. You've also talented to that for a long, long time. So at least you can now more freely take Mortal Coil as a interrupt. Maybe. It obviously will interrupt caster mobs in dungeons because it'll fear them for 3 seconds. And then, of course, take the more powerful Dark Fury. This one, no idea. But Roaring Blaze didn't change. Supremacy is still the same. Supremacy and Instability, of course, are going to be strong, but you're not going to be able to sync these up with, you know, Rolling Havoc and things of that nature. And all the Azerite traits you have right now that are really, really good to, you know, buff all that damage up. I have a list over here. Like your 1 Crashing Chaos or 1 Chaotic Inferno kind of deal, right? Your 1 Chaos Shards or whatever else you have. Mostly it's the Rolling Havoc window, I believe. Because this will all stack together into Supremacy, into Instability, into your Infernal cast. It all would stack together, which is what you do right now. But that, of course, is all gone. And I'm sure we'll see changes. We're going to see adjustments and we're going to see borrowed power, but I don't know. You're going back to the very slow version. People were asking me today in chat what Warlock was actually the most fun playing, and I think it might be Affliction, just because it's the most moved spec that actually feels like it does something besides what you're just so used to for so long. It had something, a little bit of zhuzh to it, right? The new Malefic Rapture spender for your soul shards. But I'm not sure. This is just, it's Destruction Warlock. You throw big green, you're a big green idiot cannon, basically. There it is. Nothing changed about your mastery. That's still all the same, right? It's over here, I suppose. Your whole chaotic energies is still there. Havoc is still the 30-second cooldown. Obviously, you do things like you Havoc a target, and then you get, you know, double immolates up, and you can double flash over. You can do stuff with, you know, Roaring Blaze on 2 targets as well. But it depends on if you're doing crazy boss funnel with things like Chaos Bolt, and you're attacking, you know, you're blasting into the main target, and the Havoc's target takes the 60% fall off damage. Stack with Instability, of course, because Chaos Bolt still stacks up with your critical strike chance. All that's still here. But I still don't know why they buff Cataclysm. I don't know. It's such a cool spell. Even if Fire and Brimstone does feel good, Cataclysm is so good. It's how talent should feel. It's rewarding. It has payoffs. It looks cool. Well, the graphic looks like it's from 1998. The one around you could use a work, but everything else is there. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Destruction Warlock and this. Thank you all very much for listening and watching. Next up will be the overall thoughts on Warlock, which will be a sort of a wrap up. And if anything comes to my attention, there are some great feedback threads that I will link in the description box down below. They were put together by, I call them the Dark Harvesters, but they're the Warlocks from the Council of Black Harvest, the Discord, that have put together a huge, awesome feedback thread you should go read. It has a lot of great things in there, like the Warlock Stable Grimoire, customizable cosmetic skins for all of your different demons. More of a demonology thing first off, but still, like, why does Beastmaster have the stables, but the other caster, collector, demon class doesn't? Or I don't know. Those will be linked down below. And of course, don't forget your Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime tokens every month. Don't give them to Nobbel unless you want shirtless photos of him. You can give it to me or Mike or T&E or Mr. GM, whoever else you're watching right now is testing a whole bunch of stuff, giving you information about what has or hasn't changed in this case. Poor Destruction Warlock. Don't worry. Hard cast corruption will fix it. My name's been Bay. Thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you all in the next Alpha Shadowlands video.